I'm Sophia Tureen. I'm the senior product manager with our office. I'm super excited to be here today and be in conversation with you. I'm joined by my two colleagues, Zoe and Sarah. And we also have Neva, who you will see during the breakout room activity. If you haven't already, please do introduce yourself in the chat with your name, your organization, and what brings you here today. You can also drop any questions you have throughout the presentation, and then we'll have some pause points to get into those questions. So just to kick us off, we are from the Mayor's Office for Economic Opportunity. Our mission is to help the city apply evidence and innovation to reduce poverty and increase equity. So Sarah, Neva, and I are specifically from the digital products team, and our focus is really working directly with New Yorkers to build technologies that are respectful, accessible, and community-driven. So you can see these images on the right-hand side. These are real images of feedback sessions we had with residents to build our technologies. So before I dive into today's topic, I want to first ground ourselves in the current moment of our city. So a report was released just last month that found that an estimated 1.5 million New York adults were living in poverty in 2022. So that's almost a quarter of New York City adults. It's a really staggering number. One thing that our office does is researching the effect of different income sources on the poverty rate. So this is a graph from a 2019 report by our office, and you can see the effect of different elements that increase or decrease the poverty rate. So you can consider 0 as the baseline poverty rate, and all those elements that are above the green bracket are those that help lower the poverty rate. So we see things like housing adjustments, food stamps, WIC. Public programs and services are helping reduce the poverty rate. And then everything under the orange bracket are those that increase the poverty rate. So expenses like childcare, commuting expenses, medical costs. So this graph really shows some promising news, which is that we know that public benefit programs can help reduce poverty. The not so good news is that we also know that accessing public benefits is a challenge for the city. So these are quotes from 3 real New Yorkers. The first 2 quotes are from a report by Abt Associates for our office in 2021. And this first woman, you can see that she's saying that, I don't know who to ask about public benefits. I don't know where to go. There's not a lot of clear information for people out there. The second quote is from a college student who says, I don't think there are any benefits for people my age. So there's some concerns about demographics. This third quote actually came from a recent conversation that our team had with some on-the-ground navigators, people who help others connect to public benefits and services. So this person told us that in working with different immigrant communities, there's lots of misconceptions about what they might qualify for. So there are a lot of challenges out there around how to find public benefits, but we're also very optimistic about some of the opportunities. So today we're going to talk about one of our promising opportunities, which is NYC Benefits Platform. We'll walk through, we promise to be very brief in the walkthrough so we can get to the activity, which will give you an opportunity to really dive into these resources and start to imagine new ways of connecting New Yorkers to benefits. So I'm going to kick us off by talking about Access NYC. Access NYC is our team's primary product. It is a live service for New Yorkers. We actually just celebrated our 7th anniversary of our redesign. And since it launched back in the day, millions of New Yorkers have been able to find programs that they qualify for. And it does that really by offering a simple way for New Yorkers to find the programs that they might actually qualify for. So it does that in 3 ways. The first is a 10-step questionnaire that residents can fill out. There's no login, there's no personal information that is collected. You're just answering basic questions about yourself. And I'm actually going to do a live demo. And if one of my colleagues could just go into the chat and drop the link if anyone wants to follow along. But it's access.nyc.gov. So this is the landing page. And I'm going to go into Am I Eligible? So immediately it opens this questionnaire. Let's say I am interested in finding some cash, assistance, food, and work. So I'm going to start answering some basic information about myself. Let's say I'm not working right now, have not worked in the last 18 months. I don't receive any of these other benefits. I do receive unemployment benefits, let's say about $100 every week. And I do pay for my rent, let's say about $500 a month. We then start asking questions about who's in your household. Let's say in this example, it's just me, and I am renting a standard market rate apartment, and I'm on the lease. And then finally, how much does my household have right now? Let's say about $1,000. So those are all the questions. Again, basic information about me, my finances, and my household. There's no request for my name, my personal info. Let's continue to my results. Great. So I can see that I potentially qualify for 11 programs. And here they are. I can see the categories that I had selected at the start. These are the ones that are surfaced at the top. So each card has what the program is, maybe a one-liner about a descriptor, and then how to apply. And I can click into it to learn more. If I want to save my results, I can just text them to myself or email them. So that's how Access NYC Screener works. And as of 2023, I think it's an average of 2 million New Yorkers are screening themselves and using our service every year. Other important aspects of Access NYC is that we maintain all of the information to keep it fresh and up to date. And we also do a lot of work to translate from government jargon into plain language. So what does plain language mean? You can see in this example in the corner, on the left-hand side, this is a paragraph about Medicaid eligibility. You can see that it's a wall of text. It's a lot to comprehend, not super concise. And then in the after side, the version is clearly organized. It's written with our audience in mind, and it's much more conversational. So we really take those principles to heart in our content. So the screenshot at the bottom is an example of one of our program guides. If you click into any program, you'll see the same format. It's almost like a baseball card where you have certain information, how it works, eligibility information, and then information about how to apply. And then finally, we know that New York City is diverse, and we did a lot of research with community members to understand their needs. So everything is available in our local 11 languages. So that's how Access NYC works. It's really our flagship product. You can visit it today. And before I dive into how it works, I want to pause for any questions.
Can you just walk through what happens when you click apply? Are you taken to another website? It depends on the.
So there are no applications housed on Access NYC. When you click apply, it'll take you to the right application. Some applications have a PDF version as well. Some might have places to go. So it really depends on the program, but no applications are actually housed on Access NYC. It'll take you to the right place. Thanks for the question.
Are you guys seeing any trends in the type of users who are accessing this tool? Like, you ask a lot of questions and collect a lot of data before you kind of surface your results. Are you capturing that data and like learning from that? And does that kind of inform other things you guys are building?
Yeah, it's a great question. We do have access to that data. We're working on doing some analysis on it. I can share that maybe unsurprisingly, some of the highest trafficked pages are around housing, or around food, and then also cash assistance. So we are measuring what people are searching for, how people are arriving on Access NYC, and then we're working on some analysis to understand some of that basic information that we're asking about around household and financial information. Great question. So we just saw that Access NYC is a pretty powerful product. There's lots of work behind the scenes to, like I said, keep the content fresh and up to date, and also keep it responsive to changing policies and circumstances in the city. So I'm going to dive into how Access NYC works. So our product is powered by a set of two technologies. The first is our eligibility rules engine, and then our benefits and programs data set. So starting with the rules engine. The rules engine is a type of software that uses predefined rules to make decisions. And like I said, our team does a lot of work of translating policies and eligibility information into the rule engine's logic language. So you can think of these as if-then statements. For example, If person one makes, let's say, less than $1,500 a month, then they may qualify for SNAP. That's a simple example. A more complicated one would be if person one makes less than $1,500 a month, has a household of 3 people, and one of those people is under the age of 18, then they may be eligible for SNAP and childcare vouchers and fair fares, et cetera, et cetera. So you can see how this gets more and more complicated as we have more programs. And we're very proud to say that we maintain the eligibility rules for over 40 programs that you can screen for. So that's our rules engine. And then the second piece of technology is our data set. And that is really where all that information, the plain language information, is housed. So static information about how people live, what the application link is, what the eligibility requirements are. And then we do update that regularly to make sure that it has the fresh information. So both the rules and the content are pushed to Access NYC, and Access NYC then acts as a door for people to come and find out what they may qualify for. So like I said, Access NYC has been serving New Yorkers for several years now. Over 2 million people used the service last year. But the question that has been kind of rattling around in our minds is that we know that so many New Yorkers engage with public services in different ways across the city. So they might be, for example, receiving help from a local community center. They might be engaged in one benefit, but they might qualify for another. So the question that we've been thinking about is, regardless of where they are in the benefit system, how can we ensure that all New Yorkers find out about the benefits that they may qualify for? And our vision is really to enable a world where there is no wrong door for people to find benefits. So I'm going to walk through this very quickly, but you can see that our strategy for making this a reality is to open our sets of technologies. And that's what we call the NYC Benefits Platform. So we have the eligibility rules engine and the data set, and those are continuing to push into Access NYC. But by making them open, there's now opportunities for a city agency, for example, to integrate with our technologies and enable screening. There's also opportunities for third-party organizations or, for example, apps to, again, integrate with our technologies and offer these new doors for people to find benefits. So this is the platform. I'm going to now pass it to Sarb to dive into how you can access each of these, our API and our data set. So I'll pass it to Sarb.
Thank you, Sophia. So yeah, I'm Sarab. I'm the software developer on the Access NYC team. And I'm going to start off by talking about the benefit screening API. So like Sophia said, we have a lot of rules that we take a lot of time to maintain and update, and we ensure that they're up to date and accurate. And we want to make it so that other organizations, whether they're within the New York City government or outside of the government, are able to access these tools and these rules and not start over from scratch. So we have our screening API, which is basically a way to interact with our eligibility rules engine in a standardized way. So an API stands for Application Programming Interface, and it's basically a way to communicate with an external computer. So in this case, the rules engine is like our computer that you can interact with. And you can send information about a single household or about many households in the format that we specify. You send it over to the API. The API runs the rules engine and then returns a list of programs that each household might be eligible for. So we specified a format on our website, which I'll take you through shortly. But for a single household, you can enter the text as you see here. It's in a JSON format, and for many households, it would be in the CSV, which is like a spreadsheet. And a great thing about our API, just like Access NYC, it doesn't take in any personally identifiable information. So you should ask for consent if there's someone who is using the API before sending over household information. But there isn't really a risk that someone's private information might be exposed because you're not sending them in the first place. And we can go to the Screening API docs website to learn more. So as you can see here, Screening API docs.cityofnewyork.us, we have a front page where you can just see an overview of what the Screening API is. Click Get Started over here. So in order to use the API, if you are a developer who wants to integrate some sort of application with it, you need to sign up for an account. So we have a page over here where we provide information about how you can do that. And then over on the left-hand side over here, we have a few different guides and tools that you can browse through in order to get a better sense of how the API works. So again, if you're a developer, you need to authenticate and actually provide your login information. We have that over here. And then we have some information about sample data and code. So like how, we have a sort of like a simple application that uses the API, and you can use that to kind of as a starting point. And I'm going to show you the section for making a request. So again, if you're not a developer, some of this might be a bit technical, but essentially it's just, there's a lot of different information that a household can provide that's used by eligibility criteria in order to determine, whether that household is actually eligible. So we show you how to provide that information here. So in Sophia's example, the person was living in a market rate apartment. So you could specify that the living rental type is market rate. And then you can specify things about members of the household, like for each person, what is their age? Are they a student? Are they pregnant? Are they unemployed, etc.? What's their relationship to the head of household? So, is it your child, your spouse, your parent, maybe a sibling? And then do they have any sort of income? So a lot of benefits programs are quite particular about the types of incomes and income limits because typically they're targeted towards people who are lower income. So you can specify your like whether you make money through wages, salaries, and tips. Maybe you receive child support. Maybe you receive Social Security, retirement benefits, and so on. So through this format, you can specify what all the information about a household. And then we also have a couple of tools. So instead of going through this, or in addition to going through like the specification for making a request, we also have a request builder. So this way you can enter data about a household. It's kind of like a shortened version or like a simplified version of the screener with all the same questions. And then at the end, you can generate a JSON with that data. So you generate a sort of formatted piece of text that can be sent over to the API in order to interact with it. And then in addition, we have a bulk submission form. So I'm going to demo that for you. And essentially, this is just using the part of the API that's for sending information about many households. So over here, I prepared a sample spreadsheet with information about the 9 different households. And so it's a bit random. It's just like designed to have some variation and get some different results. So these different households have different amounts of cash on hand. Many of them are renting, some of them are not. And then the people in the household, you start with person 1. So they have different ages. Let's see, one of them is pregnant. And you scroll over, you can see their different incomes. Some of these people have income, some of them don't. And then so on for person number, 2, 3, 4, etc. So there's person 2, there's different ages, and so on. So now I'm going to attach this file and upload it over here. And then I click submit and wait a couple of seconds, and I'll receive a response. So over here, there's a response from the bulk upload tool. One moment. So this response over here has for each household, whether it's a success or a failure. So I'll be succeeded. If your data is formatted incorrectly, you might have a failure. And then the programs that each household is eligible for. So for example, over here, we have the first program for the first household is health insurance assistance, and it has a program code over here. And when Zoe shows the benefits and programs data set, this is the same program code that each program in a data set corresponds to. And there's, more programs that stood out over here. First household qualifies for SNAP, for example. And then you can take this information and, the use case we have in mind is that if you're maybe building a tool using the screening API, you can then take these eligible programs and tell your users that, they, according to our API or according to the rules that we've set up, they might be eligible for certain programs. So I see there's a question that says, how do you map the program code to next steps, like a URL? So that'll actually be answered through our walkthrough of the benefits and programs data set. But essentially, each program, each row in our data set has a unique code, and it has a lot of other information about the particular program, including, a URL for you to apply, and a description and so on. Can this be used to help recipients who are worried about how a new job might affect their current benefits? So in theory, yes. I guess we do have the disclaimer that, all of we try to keep everything up to date and accurate, but we can't fully guarantee accuracy. So in order to determine, whether you're actually eligible, you would have to apply. But that being said, through Access NYC or maybe through an application that uses the screening API, you could fill it out multiple times and say, fill it out with your current information first, and then fill it out another time with your expected income from your new job.
Hey, I have a quick question, maybe not so quick. Is there a way to integrate this API key and send things and receive results through R instead of like exporting a CSV, importing it to the bulk form on the website and getting a response?
So I personally, I'm not like terribly familiar with R, but you should be able to take your data that's in R and like convert it into a CSV within the code itself, and then take and then send like an API request through that. But I could be wrong. And in general, like most programming languages support like API requests and like conversions into CSV.
Gotcha, thank you.
Saurabh, I saw another question in the chat for you, which
Oh, I
is
see.
what are examples of third-party screening tools?
At the moment, I don't think I'm not sure if I have a good example like off the top of my head. Where we recently like relaunched the API after a couple of months that it was like in hiatus because it wasn't being updated. So I think like in theory there could be a screening tool where for example a community organization I guess like has a website or has like a people who go out and like meet members of the community and have people fill out a form that way, and that could be integrated with the API. But yeah, I'm not sure if I have like a concrete example to show you. Maybe some other team members could kind of.
Yeah, I'll just say, well, we'll have a portion of our activity to kind of brainstorm opportunities for those kinds of integrations. But like Saurabh said, in theory, it could be any third party, maybe an app or a web service that is collecting similar information and then produces something. We've talked about integrations with existing data sets, maybe financial data or banking information. So it's really open. We'll have, like I said, an opportunity to go into breakout rooms and talk more in depth.
Oh, and quickly I'll answer R. McLaren's question, which is what made you decide to return JSON for a single household and returning a CSV for both? So it's not there isn't necessarily like a super strong reason. You can use the bulk submission to like send information about a single household as well, just like have a single line. But in general, I think that the bulk like the bulk endpoint could be used if you have like data that's been stored over a longer period of time, and that's typically stored as like some sort of spreadsheet. So the conversions between CSVs make that easier. All right, I think that we can pass on to Zoe.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarab. That was super helpful. Lots of good questions. So I am going to be talking through the benefits and programs data set. My name is Zoe Bourdonnais. I'm a product specialist. So you've seen one half of the NYC benefits platform, and which is the screening API. And now we're going to cover the other half, which is the NYC benefits platform, the benefits and programs data set. This is a content data set written in plain language by our content team, and it contains information on 100 programs, benefits, and services, like benefits description, eligibility criteria, and how to apply. So all of the information that you would find in the Access program guides, that is available in this data set. So we thought it would be fun to get some hands-on experience with the data by doing a scavenger hunt. But first I'm going to do a little tour of the data set on open data. So as I just said, you can see that the data set is used by Access NYC. We also have developed another product called Growing Up NYC, which has similar information but geared towards families. And so I invite you all to follow along with me. It's going to make it easier to do the activity. So you're going to click Actions here, and you're going to click Query Data, and that's going to bring you to the data set. So you can see here all the headers. We have the program names, program acronyms, and as you keep scrolling to the right, you can see all the information, like how to apply, what's the eligibility, and all the information that is housed in the program guides on Access. So the first thing before we start the scavenger hunt is we're going to do one question together. So the question is, how many programs, benefits, and services that are included in this data set are administered by the government agency, the NYC Human Resources Administration? So to find the answer to that question, I'm going to look at the data set, and I can see that as I scroll, that there is a column called government agency. So there is a search bar right at the top, but I know that the information that I want to find is in this government agency column. So I'm going to click and select that. I want to find everything that has HRA. So I'm going to type in that acronym. Oops, that's incorrect. I want to use contains, and this is where I'm going to enter HRA. So I'm going to go to the bottom. I'm going to hit apply, and I can see right here at the bottom that there are 17 programs. So as I look through that are administered by HRA. So as I look through this column, I can see they all contain HRA. There are some that are administered by multiple agencies, but these are all the ones. So that would be the answer to that question. And if I wanted to find out more about any of these programs, I would, like cooling assistance, I would scroll to the right, and I can see the plain language title. As I hover over it, it's going to give me more information. There is HTML in these descriptions, but you can see a description of cooling assistance. Basically, it's to help with buying an air conditioner, and then more information about like how to apply and what eligibility criteria looks like as I scroll over. So that was the answer to that one. I'm going to clear this so I can be ready for the next question. So it's supposed to be a fun game. There's no prize, just bragging rights and like all the glory. So we're going to get started. And the first question is, and I want you to drop your response in the chat, what is the program code for the NYC tax prep? As it is tax season, so this is a timely question. Awesome. I'm seeing an answer already in the chat, and that is correct. It is S2R039. So great job. Thank you for participating. And now we're going to move on to question 2, which is, what age range do you need to be eligible for SYEP? And what data set column did you find this in? And for those of you who don't know, SYEP is Summer Youth Employment Program. It's a program that employs youth over the summer to start getting work experience. I'm seeing some answers in the chat. They are absolutely correct. It is 14 to 24. And you can find that information in any of these columns. I see program description is right on. So thank you so much. All right. And now we're moving on to the third and final question in the scavenger hunt. When did the applications for HEAP regular benefit open this past fall? And what data set column did you find this in? Wow, you guys are fast. Great job. I'm seeing November 1st, which is correct. And then it is in several columns. So I'm seeing heads up, that's right. It's in how to apply and all these different options, online, in person, by phone. So great job, everybody. You have completed the scavenger hunt. You're now experts in this data set. You know what's in there, and it's very exciting. So with that, we are going to move on to the activity. So we've learned a lot about Access NYC and the NYC Benefits Platform. Now we're going to put everything together and apply what we've learned in a small group activity. We're calling this activity Use Case Generator Challenge. The goal of the activity is to create hypothetical situations in which the screening API can be used. So before we start the activity, let's review what the process of using the screening API might look like on a high level. The first thing you need to use the screening API is a data source containing household financial information or income information. The data source could be from an existing data set, or it could be part of a data collection process, like an application or filing your taxes. Next, the data would be run through the screening API, and the screening API would deliver screening results. And these results would look like just like what Sarab showed us from the bulk submission. It's a list of benefits programs for each household in the data set and what they're potentially eligible for. The last step would be to communicate the screening results to the people whose household income data was in your data source. So we're calling this step outreach. This could look like a text, an email, a results page. If it's part of like a application process, it could even use the benefits and programs data set that we just looked at to render plain language program information about the screening results. So now that we've reviewed the screening API process, let's start the challenge. We're going to split into small groups in breakout rooms. Each room will have a facilitator, and this is a 3-part activity, and each part will have prompts to help your group create a hypothetical use case. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for participating in our activity. I'm going to share out for my group, we had a really great conversation and brainstorming about different data sources and people and challenges. We didn't quite get to the second half, but we had a lot of ideas that I think we could have really moved forward. So thank you so much to my room. Is there anybody else who wants to share from their group what scenarios you came up with?
I can say that in my group, I mean, same thing. I think we were a bit cut short on time, but we came up with a lot of useful data sources. So, for example, the American Community Survey, rental applications, EBT, Medicaid, and proof of income for a bank loan. And also, we some group members collected the challenge of some people have difficulties with technology or computer skills, and an outreach method that can help with that is in-person outreach, perhaps to older adult centers, for example.
I love that. So many great ideas. Anybody else want to? Oh, I'm going to pass it to Sophia. Thank you so much for your participation, for sharing with us. And I'm going to pass it to Sophia.
Thank you, Zoe. And so sorry we got short on time. Thank you all so much for participating. The conversation does not have to end here. Before I pass it back to Alicia, please do sign up for any of these options. So we have our Access NYC monthly newsletter where you can learn about the new benefits and updates from our service. If you're a developer and you're interested in signing up for an API account, there's the QR code. And then if you want to get in touch with our team specifically, we're happy to brainstorm or talk about some of these resources. Here's my email address, and I'll also follow up with an email for the attendees. So thank you all so much. Thank you to my team. Please do ask any final questions, and I'll pass it back to Alicia.